Apple APL Beginner's Guide. If you have ever owned an iPhone, opened a MacBook, or paid 99 cents to download an app, you have already done business with the company we are talking about today. Apple is the most valuable company in the world, and what makes it interesting is not just the products you can see on a shelf, it is the invisible ecosystem connecting all of them. This is a beginner's guide, educational only, not investment advice. We are going to walk through what Apple actually sells, who it competes with, and why this business has kept growing for so long. So, what does Apple actually do? Apple's business comes in 5 buckets, and one is much bigger than the rest. The iPhone is the heart of the company, pulling in about $57 billion in a single recent quarter, roughly half of all the money Apple made in those 3 months. Next is services, Apple's fastest-growing chunk, about $31 billion in the same quarter, up 16% year-over-year. Services means the App Store, Apple Music, Apple TV+, iCloud storage, advertising, and the cut Apple takes when you subscribe inside an app. Why does services matter so much? It is incredibly profitable. About 77 cents of every dollar is gross profit, the money left after the direct cost of delivering it. Compare that to the iPhone, where you have to pay for screens, chips, batteries, and assembly. Services basically prints money once the platform is built. The other 3 buckets are Mac at about $8 billion, wearables, Apple Watch, AirPods, and HomePod at about $8 billion, and the iPad at about $7 billion. Add it all up and you get Q2 FY 2026 revenue of $111.2 billion, up 17% year-over-year. So Apple looks like a hardware company on the surface, phones, computers, watches, headphones, but underneath it is also a software and services company earning recurring fees from 2.5 billion active devices around the world. How does Apple actually make all this stuff? It does not run its own factories. It designs Apple Silicon, the chips inside every Apple device, like the M5 in MacBooks and the A19 in iPhones, and hands-off manufacturing. TSMC, the Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company, makes those chips. Samsung and SK Hynix make the memory. Foxconn and Pegatron assemble the final products. Corning makes the glass. Sony makes camera sensors. Apple is the designer and the conductor, not the factory floor. So, who does Apple compete with, and how does it win? In phones, Apple's main competition is the Android world, Samsung, Google's own Pixel line, plus Chinese makers like Xiaomi and Oppo. In computers, it competes with Windows laptops from Dell, HP, and Lenovo, many of which run on Intel chips. In watches and headphones, it competes with Samsung, Garmin, Sony, and others. So why does Apple keep winning, and why is the analysis we are reading from rating its competitive moat as wide? A moat, by the way, is just a metaphor for competitive advantage, the thing that keeps other companies from catching up. 3 things power that moat. First, the ecosystem lock-in. Once you have an iPhone, an iPad, a MacBook, an Apple Watch, and AirPods, switching to Android means rebuying apps, losing iMessage, abandoning your photo library, and repairing every device. Customer satisfaction on the iPhone 17 family is 99% according to one survey, 97% on Mac, 98% on iPad. People stay. Second, Apple Silicon. Because Apple designs its own chips, it can build products competitors cannot easily copy. The very thin iPhone Air, the long battery life on MacBooks, the on-device AI meaning artificial intelligence, features running through the neural engine. Each new chip generation widens the gap. And third, the App Store and services. There are 850 million people visiting the App Store every week. Developers have earned more than $550 billion building apps for Apple's platform. That ecosystem keeps both customers and developers locked in. Nobody wants to leave. What are the key drivers for the business over the past 5 years? Zoom out over the past 5 years and 3 forces explain Apple's growth. The first is services. Services revenue grew about 60%, from roughly $68 billion a year to about $109 billion. Because services has 75 cents of gross profit on every dollar, it pulled the whole company's profit margins up as it became a bigger share of the mix. The second force is the Apple Silicon transition. 5 years ago, Macs ran on Intel chips. Apple replaced Intel with its own M-series chips, M1, M2, M3, M4, and now M5, and the Mac business came back to life. Mac revenue grew from about $29 billion to about $34 billion, and roughly half of Mac buyers are switching to Mac for the first time. The same Apple-designed chip approach extends to the iPhone with the A-series and the iPad with M-series. That vertical integration, meaning Apple controls both the chip design and the device design, gives it cost and performance advantages competitors cannot match without billions of dollars and years of work. The third force is gross margin expansion. 5 years ago, Apple's blended gross margin was around 44%. Today it is 49%. That 5-point jump is huge for a company this big. It happened because services grew faster than products, and because Apple Silicon lowered the cost of making each device. Profit growth from running the business compounded at well over 30% across that span on mid-teens revenue growth, exactly the kind of operating leverage long-term investors love to see. To wrap up, so that is the business in one sentence. Apple designs and sells premium hardware to 2.5 billion people, then earns high-margin recurring revenue from the apps, music, video, cloud, and ads running on top of that hardware. As a learner, 2 things are worth keeping an eye on. One is Apple Intelligence and the next version of Siri, AI-powered personalized features expected in the year ahead, which could trigger a new iPhone upgrade wave if executed well. The second is the leadership transition. Tim Cook is moving to executive chairman in September 2026, with engineering chief John Ternus stepping in as the next CEO. Watching how the new leadership handles AI, China, and the next product cycle is the most interesting story in tech for the next few years. This was a business overview, educational only, not investment advice. Thanks for listening, and we will see you in the next one.